You are listening to the Paracasual Destiny Podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Saturday morning meeting of the minds. Thank you for tuning in. This is episode 14 of the Paracasual Destiny Podcast. I'm Sultime, and I'm joined by friends Sallybug and Green Stego. Green Stego, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, nice. And Sallybug, where are you?
I'm here.
Oh, you're here? Are you ready, though?
I am here. I am ready. Good morning, everyone.
Oh, a little clap of the hands I heard there. You are ready. So I guess this week I'd like to break tradition and start off with what everybody's been doing. If you've been playing any Destiny. I lied. We're not breaking tradition. That's what we do every week. So let's see what you guys have for me. Yeah, Stego.
We hopped in just last night, and we finished another leg of Traveler's Chosen quest.
Nice.
We'll head off to Mercury next, and we finished the Contact quest, and faced off against Nokris in Savathun's court.
Nice. Wasn't that fun just to revisit?
Yeah,
I was pleasantly surprised. I had not been spoiled on that, and I was surprised, and that was fun. That was so much fun. That felt good.
And that kind of goes to show that we did that as well.
Mm-hmm.
That was super fun. I enjoyed everything about that fight. The revisiting of the Court of Oryx and the interesting mechanics to fight Nokris. Everything about it. It was great.
Yeah, it was a great farewell to that little chapter of Mars as well, because they used that same mechanic with the green crystals that made him immune. So it was just great. It was lovely.
It was perfect.
And,
let's admit it. They hit it out of the park with that. Yeah.
And you're close to the Traveler's Chosen. You're learning about the demise of all the planets.
Mm-hmm. And
what the
I am very close to my very first title. I'm 2 steps away from getting Forerunner.
Oh, you've got to get it now.
Oh, yeah.
You're that close.
That's awesome.
I got to get the Eyes of Savathun, and I got to get Traveler's Chosen, and I've got a couple weeks to do it, and I think that's an achievable goal.
Yeah, thank you, Destiny, for
delaying the game.
Giving us casual players that little bit of extra time to get those.
Yeah, and I feel like I've been
final little things done.
I feel like I've been spinning my wheels with the extra time. Of course, we've been so busy since work started again. But I've been trying to go back. I was so busy when Black Armory dropped that I hardly did anything. So I'm going back and trying to cross some T's and dot some I's. No chance of getting the title. But I just wanted to, kind of get some of the seal stuff, the collections. And for fun, it gave me a focus. I'm probably not going to get to Menagerie stuff before it goes away. But, but the darn thing's so grindy. I was talking to Sallybug yesterday about the special bounties that Ada 1 gives you are so grindy. Like and that's part of what I was trying to do is get some of those triumphs done, get some of those out of the way. But it's fun. The whole point of our perspective is it's not all about the loot. It's about enjoying the game and the experience and the sounds and the sights and the lore and all that good stuff. Taking that in. because that's the sort of stuff you can enjoy out of game on a podcast on your way to work, or
Right.
you know, when you get a break at work, you can check your dim, or you can check Ishtar Collective, or you know, you can do so much enjoying this community and culture and the game itself, even without even picking up a controller or firing up the PC. You can enjoy so much of it out of game. It's a whole, you know, it's a whole world.
It's a whole world, yeah.
It's a whole hobby. So I'm enjoying it. You know, I must have run like 10 Izanagi forges yesterday, and it was just interesting who you get matched with. You get these guys who finish it in a minute, and then you get matched with people who don't know what the hell they're doing, and that's fun too, because at least I'm getting my kills that I need for the bounty or whatever, you know. So yeah, very good. Hola, fractious heart. Welcome to our Saturday morning ritual, and for anybody else who's out there listening, welcome. We're always all about it. Sallybug, did you do anything beyond light?
Yeah, so we did that, and a little bit of, so we did Means to an End and did that final segment, and once again did not get a cloak, so I am still that forever 1059, which is fine, because I don't know.
November 10th, you'll get it.
Right. I mean, I just don't. The thing is that I don't really have enough time to do too many pinnacle activities.
Right.
I mean, and by saying not have enough time, I mean if I have the time, I just don't have the energy. I guess maybe that's the way I should have worded it. However, but I did that. But we also, I played a little Festival of the Lost with our granddaughter. Took her in through the haunted forest.
Yeah,
oh, that's fun.
I had accumulated. We had played what did we do to get all of those cipher decoders? Because
we played with Funny Bone.
Yeah, we did some strikes, but there was
we
something.
did some strikes with Funny Bone. I did some strikes
events.
with Funny Bone. It was just so refreshing to be playing Destiny with our old D1 clan buddy.
Yeah.
And into D2, but he kind of left the game for a while, and it was nice to just go in and have fun with him in those strikes. I
think he's looking forward to Beyond Light, so he's kind of like getting a little bit into it so that he can enjoy the storyline and what's going on, because he's like getting a little bit up to date with like what are all the characters doing.
He's looking forward to his date with Han Shaw, right? I did a little. I think I discovered that doing public events is a better way to farm those cipher decoders if you wanted to farm the cipher decoders. But I also decided, for me, it's not really about the loot, and we might have touched upon this last week with those cipher decoders, because I'm not too interested in trying to get a perfect roll on either one of those guns. And there's other stuff that drops, like out of the five. I think we ran through it once. I think we only got through the haunted forest once, because it was just the two of us, and just to be for the protection of my granddaughter. I really haven't got. I don't do matchmaking type activities with her, so we do strikes if there's three of us. Like if Sultime and I can do it with her. We'll do strikes, but because I just didn't want to put her at that situation, although I can't quite remember what we did. I think we actually did do one strike with another player, and that player ended up sending her a friend request, and me as well, so I thought that was kind of sweet. So she's
learning that there kind of are some friendly, but I'm trying to be a little protective of her, so we don't do it. We went through the firewalled haunted forest. It was just the two of us, so we didn't really get that far, but that was okay. Because it was really more experiential than it was trying to get as far as you can get. We got stuck on what were Neil Sultime. You were watching us, and there. I think we were like on the second or third one, and it was just the modifier was just too much for the two of us, for just the two of us.
Blackout or glass or something.
Yeah, I think it was glass. It was something that just made it very. It was just too hard for us.
Yeah,
but that's all right. It was fun just doing that with her. I kind of miss, and I know Candy's dropping from other stuff, but I feel like the first time we ever did, my memory is that the first time we ever did Festival of the Lost, there was going around to all the different vendors. And that was like where the whole dried fruit candy thing came from with Eris Morn, because you almost went around and did like a trick or treat with all the
round,
different yeah. I missed that. I thought that was fun, and it was a way of kind of getting everyone involved with it. So it'd be fun to like just go down to the Drifter and get candy from him.
I would like it if they had the option of
it would have been nice.
It would have been nice having the option to press a button, maybe hold down X, and have Zavala smell your feet.
Trick or treat smell. Oh my god.
No, I thought that was a
nice
fun,
touch.
unique way to introduce the Festival of the Lost that first time, and I know that in this particular time frame, this was one of those things where a lot of their energy is put on this new big DLC that they're dropping, and so that they probably didn't put a lot of. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Festival of the Lost next year, because there's there are vendors that are going away. But it would have been fun, right? To like almost like a last hurrah to go down to Titan and see what.
Yes, I'm enjoying this festival, but it definitely doesn't have the same level of like magic as previous festivals of the Lost have. We're not solving a mystery of the murder of Master Ives.
Right, and there's the beauty of it and the decoration of it is great. You know, that's always fun to load into the tower and have it be different. But outside of that, I wish there was a little more interaction outside of just the gameplay of going into the haunted forest, or getting candy in different activities, and that's fun too. And I don't think I have all of the masks yet, and I'd have to look and see how many chocolate strange coins I would need for, and how to get the ship, the Ghost, and the Sparrow.
Right. Yeah, I think that's my goal with this time round, is just to get those items if I can, get as many of the triumphs as I can. I've traditionally been able to complete events like Festival of the Lost and the Dawning. I've always been able to do that.
Yeah,
so
I do want to say that most of the time with those, they seem to be, from a casual player's point of view, they seem to be accessible. So I like that. I like that they have like these events that are accessible too.
Right.
So.
Anyway.
Fractious Heart says the stream has been fine, and she also says, I love Festival of the Lost, but I understand it's a free event and more flavorful thing than substantive. Yeah, that makes sense.
Good point. Yeah.
Yeah, it is a good point, and it is since, and this is the first Festival of the Lost since they have had that free to play, right? So.
Right.
I get it. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I'd say that Bungie probably has their eyes set. They're all kind of focused mostly on the future. They're looking at Beyond Light, and I'm glad that they have a Festival of the Lost, and they got the cosmetics down, and we've got our fun haunted forest activity, but they're firing all cylinders on making sure Beyond Light and all the upcoming seasons are going to be spot on. I'm excited about it.
Yeah, and
I'm definitely fine with pared down festival.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, me too. I mean, we're super hyped for what's going to happen. So I would rather, I'm the same way. I would rather them be putting their time and efforts into tweaking. And at this point, you've got to think it's really just putting the tweaks in and doing all the tests to get out as many bugs as possible to have this thing. I mean, we're getting a whole new subclass here.
Mm-hmm.
So there's so much to this, to Beyond Light that's happening that is so different. And with that being said, there was more information that got put in the TWAB.
More information.
So
Are we ready for this week's Twabaroonie?
Yeah,
let's have a look. This week at Bungie. Let's see what's going on over there. So they talked about the raid date, when the raid's going to drop, right? This week?
Heck yes.
And honestly, I am so happy for that. Not that we ever, we do eventually try the raid, but it's usually 6 months out. I would say that's about our timeline, wouldn't you say? It's usually about 3 to 6 months after
3 to 6
it drops.
months. I would say so.
But that being said, I'm so excited for the fact that it is 11 days out and it's on a Saturday, because I feel like they have just made that raid more accessible, and the people that are who are interested in trying to delve in and get involved with it early on. I just feel like this rather than it being 3 days after, which is what they've done in the past.
Right.
To have it be a full 11 days so people don't have to necessarily take off work and grind for
3 days straight.
3 days straight and sleepless nights and all of that.
Yeah, it's affecting people's health.
I mean, there was one of the content creators, pretty, prominent content creator in the Destiny world and gaming world in general is Professor Broman, and he had tweeted out that he's not even going to be participating in the world's first race. I think he and his raid team have a world's first under their belt.
Mm. Well, in his case, it's for health reasons, but I don't blame anybody for not being able to do it for whatever, work related or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it's just it can
it's rough.
It's not necessarily a healthy thing to be awake for 48 hours straight and game that much. And I like that they have not only made it more accessible, but also are looking at, hey, Guardians need to take care of their real life selves.
The only problem with this, though, Sally Bug, is it's going to eat into our huge audience because it's on a Saturday morning. Oh, wait a minute. That's Pacific time, 10 a.m. Pacific. We're 11. We're 11. We'll be done.
Yeah.
Which begs the question, who's watching? Is anybody going to tune in?
We'll finish. I tend
hopefully
to not
they'll be at
do
top of the Twitch table, right?
Yeah. I tend not to watch them because I don't want spoilers right away. Like, I don't... Some of my fondest memories of the raids that we have done have been doing them blind, going in for the first time. And then, of course, we always end up on a YouTube video trying to figure out what to do because...
The last few times everybody's done their homework because we just don't have a lot of time. And getting all 6 people together is a feat in and of itself.
But I do have to say that those first few raids that I've done, the raids that I've done blind, where I've gone in and we kind of sort of figured out what to do, I have fond memories of those, even if it is just that first encounter that we do on our own. So I tend not to watch I keep track of the teams and the race, so to speak, but not watch the actual gameplay, if that makes sense.
That makes sense.
Makes sense.
And moving along in the TWAB, they also show the beautiful emblems that raid people will get.
Yeah, and they're doing contest mode again, so you don't have to like grind to beyond a certain power. And the interesting thing that got listed in that TWAB was that the artifact will be disabled. So there is an artifact. Remember, we had
that's right. We were wondering if there was going to be an artifact, but they might have mentioned that someplace else and we missed it.
But because the ghost is going to be more customizable, so we thought, well, if we can customize our ghost, will that take the place of the artifact and the mods that we can put on the ghost? But obviously that is not the case because they do say the artifact will be disabled.
No, they don't. They say the artifact power will be disabled. I think you'll still be able to use artifact mods. Pretty sure. It says artifact power will be disabled. 1230 power is your team's goal to be at the top. The cap beyond that is not going to provide any additional advantage in the fight. Hello?
I'm sorry. I'm talking.
You're talking in
your sleep?
Chatting
because Fractious Heart had just said, Sally Bug, there's no way we'll do it blind. So I'm trying to respond to that.
I agree with that. I totally agree with that.
I remember.
I said we've taken on the first encounter of a raid before. I think we did. I feel like or at least I was blind in doing Wrath of the Machine for sure. That first encounter. I know I ended up having to look up what was going on for that second encounter, but I'm pretty sure that first encounter we figured it out on our own. I feel like we've done that in the past. Anyway. No biggie. I like to take it all, even if it is just soaking it all.
I'm gonna have a watch party with Fractious Heart.
And there you go.
It'll be fun. They're trying to make it a huge event, right?
Yeah, we're gonna double screen. We're gonna have on one screen the stream, and on the other screen, on our computers or whatever, we'll have a Zoom going.
Yeah, that could be fun, actually.
It's so nice that it's actually on a Saturday because it also makes the raid race, even if you're not participating in the raid itself, the raid race you can watch on whatever platform you want to watch it on, whether it be Twitch or Facebook Gaming or YouTube. I guess those are the three big ones that I know of since Mixer no longer exists.
3 big ones. That's the title of this podcast. Thank you.
Oh God, I hope not.
So if we move down the TWAB, we see the pretty emblems that they're going to give, but then it's the star side, the next generation, which is just showing what's happening with the next gen consoles in terms of resolution, frame rate, etc., and cross generation play, which is kind of cool. So basically, everything's the same for all three consoles, the two Xboxes, the Series X and the Series S, and the PlayStation 5, except for the Series S is going to suffer a little bit in resolution. It's at 1080p. Everything else is at 4K. The other two consoles are at 4K. What's anything interesting here for us as Xbox players? This is interesting news.
But it doesn't seem like it's... I don't see how it would be worth it for anyone to go from an Xbox One to Xbox Series S if it caps out at 1080p.
But 60 FPS, field of view, faster load times, the next gen upgrade, which is just everything's going to be better, supposedly. So okay, you said you don't see. How about going from Xbox One to Xbox Series X for that?
Oh yeah,
for
sure.
I don't know. I was on some forums and people were saying there's not much difference to them between the 4K and the 1080p. It's better, but the real leap is this 60 FPS in the field of view is the real leap forward.
I don't know. Our TV does 1080p, and it's struggling visually lately.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a matter of...
Is it the TV or is it the GPU, you know?
I don't know what you're talking about.
The graphics processor.
I want the Series X.
Okay, bottom line. All right, let's just cut to the chase. Series X is where it's at. If you're going to drop the coin, you might as well go for the...
Well, I don't know, though, because obviously, like, you know, we're in a household and you're in a very similar situation, Stego, in that you're talking about two consoles that your household has to buy. So we had kind of talked about
we're in the same
possibly
sitch.
doing, well, maybe just depending on, and this isn't going to be on November 10th. It's not like we're going to go down and purchase that new console the day it gets released. But once we do decide to make that upgrade, which we will eventually, we're talking about maybe starting with one Series X and then possibly doing a Series S as our second, as the second console in the family, just to keep it a little more affordable. Because they're $500 a pop for the X, but I think only $300 for the S.
Yeah, but like only $10 a month or something, $15 a month. If you buy it on time.
That's true.
Got to have good credit, and you got to make those payments, though.
And that's the other thing. I mean, we kind of do that when with our cell phones, right? We just get it like kind of interest free through our contract.
On time,
Pay a certain amount a month, in between $15 and $20 a month.
Well, I like this because I'm happy about the cross-generation play is probably the thing that would affect me the most here at this time, at least for the next year or so. Because if one of us in our clan, we're in an Xbox clan, if one of us upgrades, we'll still be able to play with one another. Because Richard's not going to sit on this for too long. And Ghost is going to go out and get this yesterday. So we'll be able to play with him. He'll have the advantage in PvP with 60 FPS, right? Over our
and
30.
That was I tried to do a little bit of research on that, and it does say that you can play cross gen. So let's say you and our and a clan member have different consoles. One has an X and one has the Xbox One, and you both go into a Crucible match. Are they going to just pull from a wider pool of like all Xbox players regardless of console And will it be like that every time you go in? Because it seems like, and you had mentioned this to me before, Sultime, that it seems like the next gen people would be at a little bit of an advantage with that better field of view and better frames and all of that.
And resolution, sure.
Yeah. So I mean, it's a little bit tricky there, right? I mean, if you're kind of a competitive Crucible player, for us it doesn't really matter that much because we're not competitive Crucible players, but I am wondering about that. And are they going to, well, say I'm on an Xbox One and I decide to go into the Crucible, I'm going to dip my toes in it again. It happens every now and again. Are they just going to pull me? And I know right now it's connection based, at least if you're, on that, like if I'm doing Control or whatever. Are they only going to connect me with other Xbox One players? Or when the next console comes out, are they going to pull me with any Xbox players regardless of what console they are on?
You mean just for PvP, but it would be cross-gen for PvE?
No, I'm wondering whether or not when you go in for PvP, are they going to widen that playing field and say anyone who's on an Xbox, regardless of console.
Well, that's what cross-generation means.
Right. But it's the way it's worded. It says you can play with cross-gen, that you can play cross-gen. But does that mean if I go in freelance as a PvP player on an Xbox One, am I potentially getting put up against people who potentially have an advantage because they're on a Series X?
I think yes, because I don't think they're going to split the lobby anymore. That goes against what they're doing. They're streamlining the PvP lobbies and the PvP lobbies to some extent.
I mean, it does seem like, probably the goal is to get as many players on the next console as possible, right? So,
right.
I mean,
so I think that disadvantage could act as
doesn't matter.
I think that disadvantage can act as a marketing tool to get people to upgrade. It's like, oh damn, yeah, I'm getting owned because I'm at 30 FPS. I better buy an Xbox Series X.
Yeah, if you put a lot of value in that.
Yeah, it's like a marketing ploy where Bungie is working together with,
Xbox,
Microsoft
and PlayStation,
to try
right?
Yeah.
Well, and PlayStation. I mean, the same thing goes for, like, if you're a PlayStation player and on a PS4,
it's pay to win.
You can play with people who are on PS5, but they're going to be at an advantage. So
I don't think that they're thinking that hard about it. I think that they're just excited that there's another generation, and how can we not split the player base as much as possible?
Right, because it was an issue with our clan when there was the leap from the 360 to the Xbox One, and it took a very generous clan member sending us Xbox to end up being able to play together, because we just didn't have the resources to buy. And this is where
shout out to Matt,
talking about before. Shout out to Chromatic. That we didn't have the resources. We had one, but we didn't have the resources to buy two at the time. And so I like that, at least at this point in the game, that it's that won't happen, that you're not leaving clan members behind regardless.
Mm-hmm.
If you upgrade, you're still going to be able to play, and hopefully you'll be able to convince, just say, oh, hey, I'm on this new console and I'm telling you, it is way better. Oh, and it doesn't cost you anything if you upgrade.
Right.
It's not going to, because I think we ended up having to buy the new version of the game as well when we got the Xbox One.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this just in, I've got a very sleepy cat lying across where the keyboard should be, so I can't interface with chat. But she is barely allowing me to have some sort of control over the mouse. And she's very sleepy, but she wants cuddles. Anyway, let's move on. Let's go down. And, full disclosure, when we first read the TWAB, we kind of stopped after the fixes that they're talking about and some of the stuff and the art stuff. Oh, the art stuff's really cool this week at Bungie.
I like that they're doing those.
They're showcasing these artists
and some community artists,
giving them an avenue, giving them a storefront. Basically, that's so freaking cool. I think that was great. Hats off.
I love that they're supporting the broader community. It's
right,
awesome.
And there's talk. There's talk amongst
they do that. They do that with other things, right? They have like a spotlight of a streamer that's not usually on the TWAB, but it's on their Bungie page. They do a spotlight of a content creator.
Right. And this was actually inspiration for a discussion we had about maybe adding another segment to our podcast that would be sort of the visual arts piece of Destiny, because we cover the lore. We've got a Sounds of Destiny segment, our sound check, and then it would be nice to cover visual effects, the art, the concepts, for the visual aspect of the game.
The visual artistic aspect of the game.
But we didn't go all the way down, did we, Sally Bug? We did not. We learned.
No, we stopped at movie of the week and kind of didn't go.
We didn't scroll all the way down, and you get to this very sad. I'm going to say it's sad, just because it's been a part of the game. This individual is leaving Bungie, and he's no longer going to be Commander-in-Chief of Destiny. How are they going to even develop the game anymore without him? He was the chief developer, wasn't he? He basically did everything. Remember, he used to be held accountable for like little changes. People would get mad at
everything.
Get mad at him. Anyway, the news is that Deej is leaving, and I just wanted to I've kind of expressed my feelings about him leaving. I think it's just he was sort of introduced this game to us, at least at the community manager level, and now he's,
as far as I remember, he was the only community manager for such a long time.
For a long time, he was D1, right?
The host of all of those deep dives and all of that. He kind of was pretty much the face of Bungie.
What I liked about him is he didn't take himself seriously. He was the brunt of a lot of jokes, but all the jokes were always sort of, and you know how toxic, gamers can be. And I'm sure there was some toxicity directed towards him, but overall it was always in good humor, and he was really kind of an accepted vanguard for the community. I thought
he kind of handled that very well. I feel like he had the right personality for handling all of that. But we wish him well. We have no idea, what he's moving on to, but
I hope it's good stuff.
We hope that it's. I'm sure that he will. We have fond memories of him being a major part of our Destiny experience and introducing a large part of the game to us, and it will be weird without him. And know that then in the past, especially I would say the past year, especially Cosmo and Dylan DMG have had way more, have been more in the forefront in terms of the community management. And I think they have I don't even know what their community management team looks like up to this point, but I think they have a.
And you're doing a podcast on Destiny? And you have no idea what their community management team looks like?
What are you, some kind of amateur casual player?
I think they have a third one, at least a third person that is
we'll call them
kind of handling some of the social media type stuff.
Yeah.
So he's definitely leaving the community management in good hands. I feel like they've done a great job. They've been very active, at least on Twitter and the Twitter verse that my Twitter verse that I follow.
So the chat lit up with with some praise. I noticed that, and I'm not sure if he's still here, but Funny Bone is awfully silent when it comes to saying goodbye to Deej. I don't know what that could, how to interpret that.
Well, he did mention that he was in and out. He was listening while doing some chores and errands. So
adulting.
He could be AFK, so to speak.
Look,
there we go. Yay! Farewell, Deej. I knew he was a Deej fan at heart. Yeah.
So yeah, it'll be weird. It'll be weird that Beyond Light is dropping without. I mean, he obviously is going to still be. He'll be playing the game. I think he still has.
Make sure we follow him on Twitter,
so
we know what he's up to.
So that sleepy kitty is now chasing her tail and back here with me.
Oh, okay. So she got her rest on my keyboard, and now she's back in the other room, making her rounds.
Yeah, she twirls around, chases her tail for a couple minutes, and then stops and does a little bit of a bubble bath.
Well, I think that sums it up for the TWAB for now.
Yeah.
And it's time for a coffee break, I believe.
Awesome.
It is time for a coffee break, and I'm going to take a sip of a hot cup right now.
That sounds great.
This coffee break is brought to you by Sallybug. Sallybug has volunteered her efforts in presenting her coffee today.
I love tea. I love the jabba jive and it loves me. Coffee and tea and the jabba and me. A cup, a cup, a cup, a cup, a cup.
So today, this week's coffee break featured the Ink Spots with a little Java Jive there. Shout out to Funny Bone for suggesting that as our sound spot. Continuing along, we have been talking a lot in our car rides to and from work about the whole Silver Tree, Eris Morn communicating with the pyramids, and so we decided that the Singular Exegete lore book might be a good subject for this week's lore segment. What do you think, Stego? Does that sound good?
Absolutely. I have been thoroughly enjoying this story this season. I've been really enjoying story time with Eris at the end of each contact mission.
Mm-hmm.
And the Bungie, the writers at Bungie, the writers for Destiny, are just really hitting it out the park.
They really are, and I really kind of like the way it's trickling out in the seasons, the way they trickle out these lore pages that make up a book. So, should I go ahead and introduce the section? Are you ready to do this, Sallybug? I know you just got back from your coffee break. So let me
dive into this.
I'll go ahead and introduce you. The Destiny, the Paracasual Destiny Podcast presents A Touch of Grimoire with Sallybug, your host. Take it away, Sallybug.
Thank you. So, being that we just finished the last mission for the interference and means to an end, and it looks like Stego has also just finished that. I decided to take a look at the Singular Exegete lore book. And it's the lore from this whole thing is definitely multifold. You have the dialogue that kind of happens in the background while you're doing the contact event every week. There's a dialogue that's happening while you're actually doing the fighting during the interference mission. And there's the dialogue that happens after you've completed the interference mission, where you're talking with Eris Morn under the tree. Mm-hmm. And then there is the lore book that goes into more detail about each piece. And full disclosure, I had not read any of it. Obviously I had, well, now I have. But up until this week, and part of me does that because I really like to read the lore once it's complete, once I have the full book, because it's almost like binge watching a show. Like, I don't want to binge watch a show until I know I can watch all the episodes. So but one of the things I wanted to bring up before we even delve into the actual lore of this is what actually is happening here. So I think Eris has positioned herself near this tree because she's either getting messages or felt like she was going to that the darkness is trying to reach out and send messages to us, and so she is trying to be like the receiver and the interpreter of these messages that are being kind of like sent out to us, because it's near the pyramids, right? It's technically near one of those huge pyramid ships that are that's near Io. And the fighting that we're doing is Savathun trying to sabotage those messages.
Exactly.
Savathun is trying to prevent us from getting these messages for some reason. So there's that whole thing going on that we're not quite really sure why. Savathun doesn't want does she want the darkness all to herself? and doesn't want it to be in contact with us, with the Guardians and the light, because that interferes with her plan. I don't know. What's your take on that, Stego?
It's hard to know what Savathun's true objectives are, and that's kind of her deal. The Taken Queen, the Witch Queen. We don't know what her goals are. Sometimes it feels like she is just a jealous daughter of darkness, and looks at us as like a new, younger favorite sibling or something. And like, why are the humans so special? Why are Guardians so special? I thought we were special. But sometimes it also feels like there's just something grander, something more happening behind the scenes.
Absolutely.
We don't know what her deal is.
So one of the things I wanted to bring up, and this is the dialogue that we get after the very first, I'm going to read it, after the very first, our very first fight with Savathun trying to sabotage us getting these messages. And Eris says, "Well done, Guardian. I will interpret the darkness's messages as best I can. Although this particular form of communication is logographic, composed of evocative glyphs. Metaphors, really. For example, this message, this word could mean protected, but it is loaded with subtext. There are connotations of blithe, authoritarian forces, unshakable in their faith. The translation sheltered would not be sinister enough. Perhaps gelded? Clearly the darkness does not believe the traveler to be as benevolent as we do. Continue your efforts. We have much to learn." So I wanted to talk a little bit about that because my first thought here is the darkness obviously has decided that they're going to reach out and send messages to Eris Morn. And, but the darkness has kind of spoken to us before, right? There was like part of that in when we were doing Shadowkeep. Remember, we got kind of sucked in, and that was in our language. So it's interesting that they've kind of like, and by they or it or whatever the darkness is in terms of sending this message, they've kind of, and have they chosen to send this logographic glyph-like messages to Eris Morn because she was so embedded with the hive, and she is almost like a hybrid of a hive and a human. Are they sending messages that are similar to what the hive language is like? But she doesn't say it's hive language.
Yeah.
But I don't know. What's your thought?
I mean, we have seen hive scripture, these hive runes, and so it seems like it's at the very least similar, or maybe that hive is like a more modern, and what the darkness, how the darkness communicates, is like an older communication, an older, more primitive form of communication, like ancient Egyptian, as opposed to I don't know, something else.
Just doing a little Googling here. This is from Ishtar Collective. From what we know so far, the hive glyphs are a logographic system, meaning each glyph represents an idea. So it is logographic. That's a very big hint, perhaps.
Yeah, so
but why would
it was
Eris
just my
not
idea.
admit it, is my question.
Well, for the same reason that I just had a little bit of a conversation in chat with Fractious Heart saying, whoa, Eris is not part of the hive. I think she would be offended by that. And then I said, not part of the hive, but somewhat embedded into the hive world. And so, like, having an understanding of the communication of the hive makes her more able to interpret these messages, but why they're choosing to send them in this logographic way is just an interesting element to that. And if you do it, like you're reading through the lore books, that she is taking her notes on hive leather, and at one point one of them is knotted hive guts, which is kind of gross.
A little bit.
Just a little bit. I forget which one that is. I should pull that up and read exactly what it says. But so I did say she was a hybrid, and maybe she's not quite a hybrid. She like disguised herself in order to survive. So yeah, I agree. She she is not part of the hive world, but she was in it for so long that she has a better understanding of it.
She was, can we say she was touched by the hive?
She was in the hellmouth for too long, however you want to put it.
Yeah. I mean, being in the hellmouth for as long as she was.
Well, you know how, like in zombie apocalypse movies, one way to get through the zombies is to rub guts all over yourself.
Yeah.
Or, it's so that they don't smell you, and so you smell like a zombie. Maybe they're confusing her with a hive because she's got that sort of leftover echo of being,
yeah,
in communion with them,
or that she really can just interpret, right? So there's a lot going on. There's a lot of different messages that come through. There's one, and then if you read the lore book, and of course I'm not going. We don't really have the time to go into all the different messages because there's like 14 of them. But there was one that I wanted to kind of touch upon because I found it. I liked the metaphor that she used. But one of the things when you're reading the book is there's it's twofold. There's the official transcript, so to speak, like her official interpretation of the message that she's sending to Zavala through us, right? That's the one, so there's the communication of what she says to us when we first go to her. After defeating Savathun or Savathun's minions, and so we have that dialogue, and then we get the lore piece, and the lore piece has that same interpretation, that official communique that she sends to Zavala, and then there's her own personal notes. And there's kind of like a third element to it, and that's kind of just her own personal survival of her doing some cooking and discovering what a pineapple is and meeting another guardian called Anina along the way. So that's kind of like almost a whole nother piece to it, just to almost add some humanity to Eris, right? Like here she is, kind of sitting under this tree, trying to survive and needing to cook and make a recipe. And I think at one point her wok catches on fire. It's kind of fun.
A little slapstick they threw in there, huh? Nothing like Eris Morn slapstick.
And I don't know if it's Eris Morn slapstick as much as it is just I feel like it's humanity, right? It's adding
dried fruit candy,
like personal, easier to make a personal connection with her because she's having just personal real life experiences like us, right? But the one that I did want to focus on for the most part was what week was it? It was week 6. And the message, the word that she gave us was contrast. And she says, this message means contrast in the naturalistic sense, but also implies a judgment. Humanity assigns moral meaning to change, interpreting it as for better or for worse, Do we think of winter as evil because summer flowers must wither and die? We do not. And the darkness asks us why. Now, Steg, I was wondering if you could read the actual lore piece that came with that.
From the lore book, A Singular Exegete, Chapter 6, Contrast. Bracket. Report by Van Net Encrypted Router. Close bracket. Another rhetorical gambit. The enemy presents itself as part of a natural cycle. Like a stalking wolf, it simply obeys its nature. How can we hate it for that? Bracket. Personal notes, scored in hive leather with a knife. Close bracket. There are jaded guardians, strangers to true loss, who claim that the traveler has ulterior motives, and the darkness is a natural force. They worship gray. For them, the line between right and wrong is fine as silk and just as easy to cut. Fools. Evil is real, even in a world of gray. It must be named and fought, because left unchecked, it takes everything. Those who excuse and deny evil's existence are its greatest allies. Those who mistake its causes for moral justification are its favorite pawns. Yet the pyramid challenges me. Would not the light destroy the darkness, just as darkness would destroy the light? Why do we call a change evil when it is natural and inevitable, like Earth's winters or the sun's spots? Because some changes must be resisted. If we did not prepare for winter, we would die in it. We would cease to exist. So now I find myself using the enemy's philosophy to justify my opposition to the enemy. A neat little trap. Is winter evil? It causes evil. It leads us into evil choices through scarcity and pain. But winter is the result of natural circumstance. Even if it had a mind, it could never choose to become an endless summer. It would always hurt us, simply by being itself. Does that make it evil? But if we were to build shelters and weapons out of ice, would we become evil? Survival in winter requires wintercraft. Survival in darkness requires a new idea of good and evil, one that will not collapse at will indifference, or we will all be dredgens in the end.
Wow. Another interesting part of this lore entry is there is no deviation from what her interpretation is at all and what her personal notes on it all. Like, she doesn't talk about her recipe. She doesn't talk about Anina and pineapples and so forth. So this is all, it's just very lore heavy. And she brings up a good point in that I feel like we touched upon this in other podcasts of it is the traveler the one that is not, like, we're blindly following the traveler, but is the traveler good? And it's an age-old fight, right? The black versus white, the good versus evil, and so forth. But I love this idea of winter, almost making this analogy of winter almost like the darkness, and that it's there. Is it evil because it's there, or is it just a natural thing? But just because it's a natural thing that has to exist, that doesn't mean we don't have to steel ourselves against it to survive, kind of like we do with winter. So that's my take. Any thoughts?
I
I think, well, winter is coming.
Fractious Heart says, the light will always cast a shadow. I think that sums it up.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's a great analogy. I mean, the whole book is obviously great because the writers are amazing. And the very last one talks about how in our fighting against the Hive and the Fallen and the Cabal, are we pushing them towards their darkness and just like giving the darkness more, giving the darkness an army? Are we pushing them away to that? So, and we know that Varix is going to have a part to play in the next episode of Destiny 2, because he was a voiceover in the trailer. So we know the Fallen have something. We know that there is there's something beneath the ice that I think is possibly Hive. So yeah, this is gonna be good. It again kind of gets me excited for what's happening. What's the next? Nothing is good or bad, but thinking makes it so. That's a Shakespeare quote.
We have much to learn.
Fractious Heart. Yeah, we do. But yeah. So that's our lore segment.
Well done, Sally Bug. Thank you.
Do
you recommend reading the Exegete?
I recommend reading
pages?
all of the lore. I mean, just getting and of course another shout out to, and I think you read a little bit from Ishtar Collective. Really does put it in a beautiful format. Another shout out to them.
Yeah,
and just
they do good work and have been doing good work forever now. So.
They really have, and it was almost invaluable when the grimoire and the lore was 100% out of the game.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But even now that it's in the game, it just makes it so much more accessible to just be able to kind of swipe through the different lore pages and the next page of a lore book, as opposed to closing out one and opening up another in game, which you still could do, obviously, but they put it in a beautiful format. I think there's also links to discussions, in at least with some of the lore entries, they have links to discussions in their Discord and so forth. So if you are a fan of the lore and fan of the written story part of this game, then Ishtar Collective's a good place to start. You could just search. It's a huge rabbit hole, however. So have some time on your hands.
And before we move on to the next segment, I do want to say about lore, y'all. Mm-hmm. Maybe this is going to be an incendiary remark, and it's not fair of me to say that I just want to slide this in right before we move on to the next section, but I think that the DCV, the Destiny Content Vault, we should be sliding old lore into it. I think that we should have books like the Singular Exegete available in game, but I'm not using. If I'm going to go back through old lore, I'm going to use it I'm going to do so on the computer. If I'm not going to browse the lore on the lore tab.
And do you think they're doing that? I have no idea.
It's interesting to think about.
But on the other hand, and I kind of hear what you're saying, but on the other hand, one, it's really just a book that's off on the side that you can choose to click on. And the other thing is that it is kind of nice to be able to access the background, like what's going on here, especially since you can't go down and participate on those particular planets that Luke Smith has mentioned lore.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree that the lore should be accessible, and I do like that it's available in the game, but there is so much. There's quite a bit of lore, and I don't think it's necessary to have it all in the game.
Yep.
Hundreds of thousands of words of text, Fractious Heart says.
Yeah, it's
a good point.
It's incredibly in depth. So, I agree with you. I don't know what their plan is to kind of I don't know whether they're paring that down and making it part of, but I'm kind of in agreement with you. I don't think it's necessarily controversial. It, like you said, if it's maybe not completely hidden away like the other content in the Destiny content vault is, but it's accessible on Ishtar Collective, which means you could make it accessible on almost like a lore page of the Bungie.net and so forth. So I don't know. Yeah,
I still was a fan of Destiny lore in Destiny 1 when it was only available through Grimoire cards, and they're not directly in the game.
And I'm going to be the first to say this. This is, well, I'm not going to be the first to say it. I'm sure other people have said it, but this is the first time I've said it on our podcast. And that is that I think I actually sought the lore more when it was out of game. I would watch the YouTube videos from content creators. There were streamers that would have who would stream parts of the stream and have conversations about the lore, and people would talk about it, and it would get me interested in what that story is, and then I would seek out the Grimoire cards, and then once Ishtar Collective came around, but listen to the lore podcasts and so forth. All of that has, obviously I've been very a fan of the stories all along, but I feel like with it in the game, I don't always go to. I do, especially with the ones where you just like the lore that drops with the exotic weapons, or some of the exotic dialogue. I'll pull the trigger and read that, but sometimes it's actually a little cumbersome it's in game, but it's still a little cumbersome to access. So I feel like it being there didn't necessarily get me to access it anymore.
I think a lot of it's in the UI.
Maybe a little more, but not as much.
I mean, Elder Scrolls did it right. They had a whole page dedicated to the books that you collect.
I think
it was a good UI.
The holding down the trigger thing is really very cumbersome. I mean, for me, like as a console player, right? It's a little cumbersome because you have to hold down the trigger. You can't just slide over and then start reading it. You have to have actively be holding down that trigger while you're reading it. So it's a little bit it's a little bit cumbersome for the exotic lore that comes through. And then I had mentioned it a little bit earlier, is in that the lore books that are in the game, and you go through the lore tabs, you open it up, you read it, then you have to close it, and then you go to the next one. It's not fluid. It's not as fluid. So
I really did like the original Destiny 1 Grimoire. Just call it up on your phone. And remember the Grimoire cards actually had achievements on them too? Like you got extra drops for for a fallen, captain Grimoire card. It also included how many you had killed, and then when you reached certain tiers, you would increase drop rates of certain loot. I thought that was a great idea. I wouldn't mind them bringing something like that back. So it was interactive, and also it connected the Grimoire card with the game, with your personal interaction with the world, which I thought was pretty cool.
There's some pretty nice dialogue going on between Stego and Fractious Heart and Funny Bone about the good versus evil.
Well, let's hear about it.
Story. So, Funny Bone says the obvious take is light is good. Like any villain, the darkness is trying to persuade the virtues of their twisted morality. And then Fractious Heart says, I respectfully disagree. A lot of the lore has dealt with the ambiguity of good versus evil and how it's a false binary. I'd be surprised if the Traveler is pure good. And the Traveler gives gifts, but it also takes our memory, right? So, but is it taking away our memory for our own preservation? Or for its preservation? It's just that constant, right? It's never as black and white as...
No, it's complicated, right?
It's always complicated, right? Just
and
like
it's
that.
Perspective. It's
contrast.
Always right.
Just like the that's why I picked that lore. The contrast. It's like winter. Winter itself isn't pure evil, but it can cause an awful lot of pain, and if you don't steel yourself against winter, can bring death. But that doesn't necessarily mean winter in itself is necessarily bad. And the one last thing I wanted to bring up, which is just great, is Fractious Heart says, I theorize off and on that the Traveler is a runaway child of the darkness, like a Lucifer Morningstar type. That's a great theory, right? Like
sure.
we don't know.
And you don't know,
origin,
but they could have had that in mind.
Origin,
that could have been the seed for the whole storyline.
Right, and we don't know the origin of the Traveler.
No.
So I like that theory.
Do we know what it smells like? What does the Traveler smell like? I theorize vanilla.
I don't know.
Right?
What does light smell like?
What's the sound of one hand clapping?
I think we should move on.
Let's move on to speaking of sounds, right? This week's sound check, Destiny sound check. All right, sound check coming back at you from the air chair here in the sunny city. We are going to feature this week. I decided to pull out an oldie but goodie this week. If you haven't seen it, you must check it out. In fact, I'll play the beginning of it here on the podcast. It's a 2016 vidoc called, or vidoc rather, called the Sounds of Destiny. And I'll give you a breakdown of what we're about to listen to, aka see. It starts off with one David Henry. Not sure if this was 2016, so I'm not sure if some of these people are even still with Bungie. But he introduces the concept of the never-ending quest for all the unique sounds they use in the game. He is followed by, you get to, if you watch the video, you get to see what Sky Lewin looks like. He's the composer that came on to work with Michael Salvatore. He briefly talks about the three main categories of sound at Bungie. The Foley work, which is sort of imitating doors closing, footsteps, things like that they do. The recorded field sounds, like they do for noise, every running water. They might go to a babbling brook with their microphones, or weapons, going out and recording the sound of a machine gun to later be altered into use for an in-game weapon. And how all three of those need to be mixed together at the right moments in either real time or pre-production for, say, cutscenes. Then the bulk of what we will see in the first 5 minutes of the vidoc, I think it's a 15-minute video, is Jay Wineland, who's the head of audio, and turns out I found out he worked on all 4 Halo games. And I hope he's still there, because we need those old school guys from Bungie to keep the traditions going, right? He talks about recording the weapon sounds. He also reveals a couple of secrets behind the game's grenade sounds and where they got the Vex footsteps, the sound that the Vex make when they walk. That's followed by an interesting fella, Zach Thomas, who's surrounded by this sort of monstrosity of synthesizers that he's created to make some Vex sound effects with his synth setup. And then finally we'll see Evan Bueller, who is playing a vibraphone with a cello bow to create some really unique sound effects for the game. So without further ado, I think I'm just going to go ahead and sell this vidoc on people by actually playing it on stream here. And if you're listening to the podcast, it is about sound, so that's the most important thing you can take away from this. Here is the official Bungie vidoc, The Sounds of Destiny.
Tenors, can you round out your ah a little? 1, 2, 3.
Leave him wondering how the hell you did it.
The process of making sounds for games has actually gotten easier over the years. The challenge is that we need massively more sounds. We have much more complicated engines and interactions and gameplay mechanisms, and you can make no assumptions about how that's going to be heard by the player.
You've got sound effects, which may be something that's pre-existing, or maybe sound design elements that are implemented in cinematics or in the gameplay. There's Foley, things that are actually recorded. And then there's the music, which obviously has a lot to do with the mood and the feel and the experience that the player has as they go through the game. And then all of that's mixed together in either real time through the gameplay, or in cinematics it may be pre-mixed.
Isn't this Eris Morn ship?
Is it? The thing that's most important to us as an audio team is making sure that the person is always hearing the most important thing in the game at the time they're supposed to hear it. So when you're firing your gun, that should be the most important thing that you hear in the game. We found some contacts that allowed us to go to a very remote area of an Air Force base outside of Las Vegas and be able to record some awesome stuff. It was a fantastic trip.
Rolling, yeah.
We just said, let's record as much varied stuff as we possibly can because we'll find a use for it.
See the crosshair? Yeah.
We recorded about 20 plus different types of weapons, from like World War I machine guns to 50 cal sniper rifles. One of the cooler things that we did, which I had never heard about before, was some stuff called tannerite, which is used in sort of target shooting at long distances. And it's two powders that you mix together. You can drop it on the ground, you can shoot it with a .22 and it's fine, but if you shoot it with a high power rifle, it goes kaboom. We basically used that as was the basis of all of our grenade sounds in the game. It was amazing, it was awesome. One of our contacts here at Bungie runs a couple different machine shops, recording anything from lathes to blow torches. There's a stamper machine that was actually punching out circles of like half-inch sheet metal. That actually turned into the Vex footsteps. Anything we could find, we just like basically going to a place that had lots of machinery and saying like, make that go, and we'd record it.
This is a Eurorack synthesizer, something I've been building for a while. It's a bunch of different pieces of synthesizers you put together, kind of make your own instrument out of. A lot of people use it for music, but this is just for sound design. So I'm playing water sounds out of the laptop. It goes through the system, and I'm going to record it here in Pro Tools. This is the water sound without the effects. And this is it with the start of the effects, the beginning of the effects. That's kind of a good sound. It's not quite vexy enough for me yet, but of course it can get a lot crazier. I'm increasing the modulation amount that's coming from this thing. It's fun to kind of get out of the box once in a while and get some sort of tactile control going on.
This is actually my instrument. It's called a vibraphone, and normally when you play this, you play with mallets, and so I'm actually using a cello bow. So these are metal keys, and there's an edge on here, and this bow has a lot of rosin. You can just put it on the edge, and you just slowly draw it across, and it can draw a nice sound out. We want to try and get just some things that we can use for like energy or magical tones. Like if you've been through the Fallen transporters or elevators, we'll actually have some of the sound mixed into them.
I designed this little device. It's essentially a guitar pickup without a guitar.
Okay, I'm going to stop it there. And of course, go watch this. If you've already seen it, watch it again. It's just so cool, and it really is a good primer and gives you an appreciation of how much goes into this game, just on the level of the sounds. And if you add the cost, one of the things I was thinking about. I saw them going out into the field in the desert there to record the guns, and I was thinking, man, just that alone is costly because you need a new sound for every gun in the game, pretty much. I'm sure they do the same sort of thing with reskinning sounds, like to morph them a little bit, but that takes time too to reskin. And when you imagine how many guns have been in this game, and so we're not even talking about the coding for the weapon, for all its stats and how it works and its recoil and all that. We're not even talking about the art design of the weapon. We're just talking about the sound alone is a huge endeavor. All of these things are huge endeavors, so you can imagine how time-consuming and expensive it is to just make a rare scout rifle that's in the game, right? So yeah, that wraps it up pretty much. Sallybug and Stego, are you guys still there?
I'm still here. Fascinating.
I'm still here.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
So
that's a vidoc that I remember watching it very early on when it first came out. But you're right. It deserves a second listen. To just see how much goes into creating that immersive experience that is part of the world. I find myself sometimes, I noticed this actually just recently, because I tend to, especially when I'm playing with someone, have the sound turned down, not all the way, obviously, because you want the sound in the game, but not up so much that I can't hear the conversation going on. And that's kind of the drawback to communicating outside of the chat, because sometimes there's a nice mixer when you're chatting in game and you can hear both. But I don't have a good, and I think it's broken on my controller, my current controller. I can't really do a Destiny do chat through the Xbox.
Mm-hmm.
But that being said, I digress. I did have the sound turned up, probably because of something else I was doing, and just forgot to turn it back down. And I noticed that the bow that I was using, and I think it's the most recent one, Whispering Slab, actually has a sound when it's gotten it gives you a sound cue of when it's fully drawn, so when you should release it.
Mm-hmm.
And I had never noticed that before.
Mm-hmm.
And
some of them have visual cues as well. They light up.
Yeah, they
have
visual cues as well. But I had never I had used that bow before and hadn't noticed that sound cue, and it's like, and now I use that sound cue pretty much every time I use it. Like,
right.
And I think there's more of that in the game that I'm not even aware of. So just,
I think sound
similar to like the art direction and similar to like the story, the lore and the story and all of that, is that it's all part of that immersive experience that sometimes you can take for granted.
Yeah. And especially the sound, I think, gets taken for granted because you can't see it. You know what I mean? It's invisible and it's coming in through our ears. But yeah, I mean, there could be a Sounds of Destiny podcast that's all you talk about, because it is that complex, like for any of these aspects of the game that we talk about. I wonder if there is one. I don't think there is one. I haven't seen one. But anyway, I think that wraps it up for this week. Stego, any closing thoughts from you? No?
No, I am another good episode down the
another one for the garage to collect dust. Yeah, put it out in the garage and get a new one, right?
This is Fractious Heart said, I like how some of the ghosts have different sounds when you pull them up, and I think I've mentioned this one other. And Funny Bone said what they do for the sparrow sounds, and I think I mentioned this at least one other time. And I know I've told it to you full time. One of my favorite sounds is the sounds of when you collect planetary materials. They're unique to every planet, and there's just something so satisfying. Yeah. It's like you're not just collecting it, but that satisfying sound you hear as it's kind of like disintegrating from the planet into your inventory. It's incredible. It's incredible. It's still one of my favorites.
It contributes to the dopamine rush,
all of the planets,
Yeah.
all of the planets.
The helium coils are my favorite, I think, because they're like this sort of decompressing sound as you're sucking out all the stuff.
The sound for stasis is going to just be
I can't wait.
Amazing. It's going to be so fun because in real life, one of my favorite sounds is the sound of snow crunching under your feet. So to just be able to hear that in the game and have it be part of it.
All right.
Yep. Another great podcast.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming, everybody. Great conversation today.
Absolutely. You've been listening to the Paracasual Destiny Podcast. I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in to episode 14 here. Shout out to Funny Bone and Fractious Heart for helping us hash out some of these ideas. And to my co-hosts, Green Stego and Sally Bug, thank you. You can look for us on Twitter at ParacasualP and on our YouTube channel here, where we broadcast every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. or thereabouts. Please consider a like, subscribe, or comment, or Twitter, YouTube. Reach out to us if you like this sort of thing, and feel free to contribute in any manner, shape, or form. Bye, y'all.